Hello and welcome to this tutorial on the accessibility options that are available to players and creators in Crayta. So accessibility is a really important topic for Unit 2 games. We're really proud of how accessible we've made Crayta so far, but we know that it's not the end of the journey for us there. And we know that accessibility is a two-way conversation. Whilst we've come up with as many ways as we can to improve the accessibility of our game, I'm sure there are lots of additional ways that it could be improved, and we're really open to talking about this stuff and making sure that you have the best possible experience when you play the game. So please, if you have any suggestions or ways that we could improve the accessibility of Crayta, please get in touch on our Discord or on the forum or on Twitter, or just get in touch with us however is best for you. And we will see what we can do about improving the accessibility of this game and having that conversation with the communities that we are so passionate about. That said, should we have a look at what accessibility options there are available at the moment? So if I hit escape or press start on the controller, that brings up this menu, and I can actually access the accessibility options or find the accessibility options over here where there's this little settings cog. Now here we have quite a wide range of settings, but don't be discouraged because these are all grouped into sections that you may find useful. They've been labeled accordingly in their different sections. So the one labeled accessibility has the key accessibility options. So it has things like the language of the game, and you can change this to one of the other languages that Crayta has so far been translated into, and that's the entire interface as well as the game itself. If you're finding that your language isn't represented here in the language selection, then please again get in touch with Unit 2 Games on our Discord or Twitter and ask us about implementing additional languages, and we'll see what we can do. If we know that there's a community of players out there who are passionately playing our game and wanting it to be translated into their language, then we are looking to do things like that. You can also turn on or off your controller vibration. If you don't like the controller vibration, you can turn that off. You can decide whether to have the audio come through both sides at the same volume, or if you want them both sides at the same volume in your headset or in your speakers, you can turn this on, and that means that it won't have the 3D audio whizzing around your head. Instead, it will just come through both sides at the same volume. We also have this colorblind mode here, and if you have deuteranopia or protanopia or tritanopia, then you might want to select the appropriate colorblind mode setting for yourself, and you can also tweak the strength of that here. So and this will then apply throughout every aspect of the UI, the editor, and in the game too. So it's almost like a filter that goes on top of everything, and hopefully means that your experience of the game is just as enjoyable as everyone's. Now onto some of the other options. So they're the key accessibility options that you may not have known existed, but let's have a look at some of the other accessibility, the ways we can use some of the other settings in order to improve the accessibility of our game. So in the controls, every control is completely remappable in Crayta. So if you're using a different device, then you can come in here and you can essentially set your controller to use the buttons that you find are most suitable for the way that you play Crayta and the way that you want to make games. And this is every aspect of the game. So whether it's playing the game, whether it's moving the camera around when you're in spectate mode in a game, whether it's the quick menu where you can do your emotes and where you can tag things, or whether it's actually in the editor, and that's both in the basic mode editor as well as the advanced mode editor. I really encourage everyone to have a look in this section of the settings to see if there's anything that they think that they could improve the way that they're making games, just by looking at these shortcuts here. Like, for example, did you know that you could change between the transform tool and the rotate tool with F1 and F2? Well, now you do. So take a look at some of the shortcuts in the controls there. In the input screen, there is even more settings that we can use to adjust the game to suit our needs, however we want it to. In here you can turn individual axes to invert, both X and Y. And you can look at things like the sensitivity of both the mouse and the controller. And then you can look at the controller specifically. And here we can change the dead zone of the controller, which is the area in the middle of that joystick where it doesn't register a click. It doesn't register you pushing a direction. So if you're finding that you're accidentally pushing directions a lot, then you might want to increase your dead zone so that it doesn't register those small errors that you might be making. In the graphics section, we can adjust the gamma and the brightness, and in the audio section, we can tweak individual levels of all of the different aspects of the audio. In the editor section, we can there's some additional accessibility options in here that are very useful, things like the camera speed. So the camera speed is set at the moment at 750. When I'm zooming around the editor, that is the speed of it. Now, if I'm working on a big level or I'm finding that it's moving too slowly for me, I can increase this. If I'm finding that it's moving way too fast and I don't know I can't see what's going on properly, then I can decrease this and move the camera around a bit slower. The delete speed is essentially how long it takes to delete something in basic mode. So when you're looking at something and holding down the delete button, how long do you have to wait until that thing is deleted? You might want to start with it quite high when you're just new to the game and you might be making a couple of mistakes. And then eventually when you're really good at it and you can whiz around and make loads of different games, you could then drop this right down, and when you know that you're going to delete something and you're used to the controls. If you're finding that you're making mistakes, then I would increase this. Here we have like the entity icons and things like that. So if I turn the entity icons are on by default, which means things like if I go over to this locator here, the locator icon is this little pinpointer thing here. So if I go into the settings, into the editor, and turn off entity icons, that will delete. That will remove that icon. Although I could still move this locator around. So any of those icons, like the effects has one, the sounds have one. Any of those icons, if you're finding they're cluttering up your game creation, or you're finding them difficult to see past, then you can turn them on and off during whilst you're playing, whilst you're editing your game. So I'll turn that one back on, but it might be good to sometimes turn it off if I'm finding it difficult to see what's going on with, especially when you're tweaking like small things and they've got an effect and a sound added to them, then that's a useful time to turn that entity icons off. The show button labels is really good, because what that means is I don't need to know what these icons are. I can use the terminology underneath them in order to know what tool is going to do what. And this is especially useful if you're just learning how to use Crayta and you keep forgetting which icon means what, especially when it comes to, if you're first looking at the advanced editor mode. It's easy to be a bit worried about all of these different tools. But by turning on the labels, now I can see, oh, that's that and that's that. So that's how we turn on the button labels. I'll turn those off. Again, we can change the language here as well. And we can actually change the theme to dark mode, which it is by default, which means it's black around here and dark grays and things like that. I find that easier on my eyes, but if you would prefer, you can turn that to be lighter colors like white and light grays with dark text instead of light text. The theme color is something that you can just use to customize your theme and make it feel like it's yours, but it's also something that means you might be able to see it more clearly if you have one of those, if you have a color blindness or anything like that we talked about earlier, then you might want to look at the theme color and select a slightly different color. So by selecting blue, now all of the buttons are blue. Put it to that one. And finally, in the editor, we can set the editor scale. Now, if you set this low, you'll see that the buttons go really quite small. Now, this is quite good. If you want to be able to see lots of the voxels over here, and you want to be able to see a lot of the screen mode, now it's set to large. Now it's set to small. I can make these a lot smaller and have a little bit more screen space. That said, it's now a bit tricky to select specific things if you're not very good at using the mouse like me. So going back to our editor here, maybe things are a bit complicated or a bit tricky and a bit fiddly, in which case you can actually increase the editor scale, and this will then make the buttons a much more chunky size and much more clickable. It can mean that if you've got a HD monitor like me, it could look a little bit more cramped, but that's okay. Especially if it means that you can click the buttons a lot easier. That's perfectly awesome. You might find this works a little bit better on like a 4K monitor, and then you've got even more screen real estate for chunky buttons. So that's the editor scale, and that's another great accessibility option, which might mean that you can I can stop making so many mistakes when I'm trying to click buttons or accidents, and I can use the buttons how I want to use them. That's essentially some of the accessibility options that are available to all of the players and creators in Crayta. Head over to the settings menu, give them a whirl and see which ones they might improve your experience of Crayta, might make it more accessible, or might just speed up your game creation or give you that edge in a racing game maybe, where you're finding that you keep making mistakes, and just by tweaking a couple of those controller settings, you can actually give yourself a little bit of a break and maybe improve the experience for yourself. And like I said at the start, this is a two-way conversation. We're always open to hearing about how we can improve the accessibility of Crayta. We're really passionate about our diverse community that is rapidly gaining more players all the time, and we hope to continue to do so. So please get in touch with us if there's anything here that you're not sure about, or if you would like to see some improvement in some accessibility option in the future. I look forward to seeing you in the game.